Hello and welcome to this video, and on this video I want to discuss the question of whether it is best for musicians to try and impress or express. When we look at the motivations behind music making, for me, when I examine it, a lot of the time it seems that musicians are trying to impress, and they try and do this in a number of ways. They try to impress by showing off their technical ability. They try and show off their skill, right? Or their skill as a songwriter, okay? That would be an area where they're trying to impress, and that becomes the goal of the music making. Or they might be trying to be cool and trendy. They might be trying to fit into a certain genre that they like. They might be trying to conform to what they think is the best way of making music. To them, their perception of the music industry around them and things that are in style, that are cool, that are hip or whatever untrendy word a older man like me comes up with. That could be the goal of the music making. Or they could try, and I think this is the worst one really, they could try and make the music as perfect as possible, so that they appear to not ever make any mistakes, never put a foot wrong. They are like godlike creatures that when they play, everything is absolutely perfect and in place. And of course, nobody plays like that. And this is where modern technology, digital recording methods have come into play, right? Where musicians can make a performance seem almost perfect by going in and repitching and positioning every single note so it's absolutely perfect. How many times has a musician tried to put a solo down, for example, and ended up doing 50, 70, 100, 150 takes, and by the time they get something which they deem to be perfect, the vibe of what they had to start off with when they started playing, which was there, but had these little mistakes, a few bum notes here and there, as they've been forgotten. They have swapped expressing themselves, which is at the beginning, to trying being perfect. So when we look at musicians, I think a lot of the time, if you ask what's their central motivation for what they're doing, it will be that they're trying to impress in the areas I've described. And there could be other areas too. And I'm going to give you an example of this. I've taught drums now for nearly, over 30 years now. When you sit down with drummers, and I think this is true of guitarists as well, a lot of the time when I'm sat with them, I'm looking at the overriding motivational goal that they have ascribed to when they are practicing. Because when you practice, you are practicing to an aesthetic criteria. And you come up with that aesthetic criteria, right? You supply that. And in most cases, when I'm teaching someone, the overriding goal that they've got, the thing that they're trying to do to this thing they're practicing, is they're trying to play faster. That is their overriding goal. And why do they want to play faster? Because if they play faster, it's the cheapest and easiest way to show that you have skill on the instrument. It dazzles. People want to dazzle and impress. They want to be able to pick that guitar up or pick up their drumsticks or sit behind a keyboard, and when they play, they want to burn and blaze all these notes, because that is evidence of technical skill, motor skill on their instrument. And so when they sit down to play, what they're doing is using that criteria as an overriding criteria for what they're doing. So they're basically doing the exercise, right? And that exercise has probably been chosen because it will help them to play faster, right? So I'm going to play this exercise because this exercise will get me to play faster. And when I play it, I'm going to try and play it as fast as I possibly can, right? So that is in the area of practice, where you would see a musician really focusing all their practice on the end result of impressing someone, okay? Another thing that a musician may do when they're practicing is they may copy music they like. So they think that that's a cool style of music. They're really into thrash metal, or they're really into jazz, and the thrash metal guy is sat there, the drummer's trying to get all those fast double bass drums, and they're trying to get all those blast beats exactly like they've heard on their favourite record, because in their sort of cultural group within which they reside, that is the stuff that they think will conform them into that genre, all right? which obviously is taking out any individuality. And with the thrash metal example, and the same would be true of jazz, you know, there are literally tens of thousands of musicians on the planet at the moment trying to negotiate their way through giant steps. And not only are the chord changes of giant steps really, really difficult, but it is at something like 270 BPM. So it's not just difficult, it's fast. Those things are combined. And those musicians are doing that because they believe that is the conforming thing they need to do to conform to the style of music that they think, if they can conform to, will impress people, right? So this idea of impressing people is massively embedded into the practice routines of musicians. Their goals when they sit down and practice are to try and create things which they think will impress other people. I'm as guilty as this as anybody else. This is why I know it. I'm not sat here like holier than thou saying, you know, I don't do this. I've done this all my life. I've always wanted to impress. I've always wanted to be able to play things where other musicians go, wow, that's amazing. That's amazing. You know, how can he do that, right? And this, as I said, is compounded. It's compounded by people then, when they do recordings, using the technology to make it sound absolutely perfect, as though they are godlike, from Mount Olympus, playing stuff where they never go wrong and they never put a foot wrong or a note wrong or a beat wrong, okay? A musician's practice routine, therefore, is often is aimed, because when you're playing music, there's an aim. That's my whole point in this video. There is always an aim. And what I'm trying to do is get you to question, what is my fundamental aim? When I sit down to practice, or I sit down to write a song, or I sit down to play, what is my overriding aim? What am I trying to do? If you change that overriding aim, if you swap the target of impressing to expressing, what effect will that be? Okay, so what do I mean by expressing? What we're doing when we express something in the arts is we're trying to express a feeling, an emotion. Okay, so if you were then to go back to practicing your exercise, you may say, well, I want to express what I think this exercise is trying to consolidate in my technique, which will enable me to express emotion, feeling in the listener. So let's take the drums. I am a drummer. Most of the time, fundamentally, what a drummer's job is not to play as fast as possible. Their job is to make people dance, to make people tap their feet. That's the overriding thing with a drummer. They're trying to play rhythms. They're not playing pitch. They're not supplying the notes or the harmony. They are supplying rhythms, and rhythms are felt deep within us. And when we feel it's right, we get this feeling of wanting to dance. Now, when you dance, what dancing is movement to music which is relaxed. Relaxation is the key. When we listen to a musician that has a good groove, what we're recognizing is the circular movement embodied in that rhythm that they are performing with relaxation, with a lack of stress, right? The reason why this is important is because all human beings have to be able to recognize that feeling, because we are trying to learn new motor skills all the time. When you're a toddler and you're trying to walk, for you to walk, you have to basically fall forward and then stop yourself, fall forward and stop yourself. If, you know, when a toddler's trying to walk, when they get it wrong, bang, they fall down, slap down on their face, don't they? So there's a lot of stake there. But the trouble is to walk like that properly, every movement's got to be circular and rhythmical and without stress. All of you, when you're walking down the road, walk like that. You have learnt that at a deep embodied level in yourself, right? So the ability to recognize that is then embodied in grooves. When you feel it, it is the looseness that you feel. It is the lack of stress. So if you're a drummer, surely that should be a strong criteria for how you practice. So you start to practice, but you've got the goal of speed. So what you do is you try and push that exercise as fast as you possibly can. And when you speed up, you push that exercise into tension. And you end up teaching yourself not to play fast, but to play tense. Exactly the opposite of the thing we want as a drummer, where we need to express emotions. Now, say you're a guitar player and you're trying to practice how to solo, or a saxophone player, you're trying to think how to solo. When you're improvising, it's not just that groove and swing that makes the solo sound cool. It's the note choice and the way you play the note. Now, when people teach improvisation, one of the things they rarely discuss is the quality of the note and what that note sounds like, right? When you play a note, unless you're playing something like a vibraphone or a piano, when you play a note in guitar or a trombone or a flute, you can add vibrato. And vibrato can exist in all sorts of different ways. Vibrato is how much the note wobbles. It can wobble very fast, or it can wobble very slow, right? And you've got all the gradations in. How wide is the vibrato? Is it like, or is it? There's all these different sounds just in the vibrato. And then when you add the vibrato, sorry. When you add the vibrato, when do you add it? Do you just go, or you go, and I'm not a great singer, so it's really hard to be able for me to sing with vibrato. If you want to know what a good singer is usually someone who can pitch, but more importantly, most singers, where they go, oh, that person's got a natural talent for singing. The natural talent is they can naturally do vibrato. And when you can naturally do vibrato, it doesn't matter if it didn't hit the note quite right, because you're wobbling around, okay? So we start to see there's a whole different sets of criteria for playing an instrument. And then you can ask yourself the fundamental question, what am I trying to express on the instrument? What do I want to get across? Do I want to express my personality? Are you a very depressed person and you want to try and get across the angst and the pain of living in a world that doesn't understand you, which is full of chaos and you can't deal with it? You know, is that what you're trying to express? Because those are the sort of things that become embodied in music that make people love music. Or are you trying to express joy? Or are you trying to express anger? Last night I did a gig with a guitarist called Matt Stevens. And Matt Stevens has a very specific guitar style, and the singer of the group, which is an incredible artist called Tim Barnes, check him out, a brilliant artist. When he introduced Matt, he said Matt in real life, he really is one of the most kindest, easygoing people you'll ever meet. A real, you know, he's a big guy, but he's a big teddy bear. But when he plays the guitar, it is like Satan playing the guitar. Angular notes, you know, mess, noise, screams, you know. And last night he was doing a guitar solo and he stood up, because he was sat down, and he stood up and the strap broke off and he was holding it at the edge of his hands and he was just screeching these notes out, and then he dropped the guitar onto the floor and it was feeding back all over the place, and then he walked off stage and he was expressing emotion, right? When I was sat backstage and chatting, he says, I've got no interest in trying to be the fastest guitarist in the world, you know, the most technical guitarist. I want to express this darkness, the darkness that he heard in bands like Napalm Death, that he had heard in Voivod, in the Cardiacs, in the Mahavishnu Orchestra, in Tony Williams' Lifetime. This is the big chat we were having. When he heard that music, he heard a tormented darkness that he was very attracted to. And his whole being as a musician is to try on his instrument to embody that feeling, which he does very well. And Matt has his band, Fierce of the Dead, incredible band, a dark, punky prog band, you know, angular, and incredible. This is what music is about. It's about trying to express something, not trying to impress people. Now, here's an idea for all the musicians that are watching, okay? There are two things that get in the way of musicians getting stuff done. One is the idea that they're not very good. You know, they think, oh, I'm just not good enough. You know, I'm not. You know, they listen to their heroes. They go, I'm not that good. You know, and that puts them off. And this can really be a torment for some musicians as they sit there going, oh, why am I even bothering? I'm just rubbish. I'm rubbish. The lack of self-confidence, the things that drives musicians to get in that computer and start putting all the mistakes right so they look competent, but deep down they feel like they're not competent, right? People believe they're not good enough and it stops them from expressing themselves, right? The second thing that really messes musicians up is this idea that the competition is great. There's so many people out there trying to do this. Now, here's a secret. If you're watching this video, I'm going to tell you a secret. The reason you have those two ideas is because you are trying to impress. Scrap that and throw it out the window and replace it with you are trying to express something. What are you trying to express? Your personal humanity. And your personal humanity is based upon two things. It's the fact that you are a human being and you have things in common with other people, but you are also, on this side, an individual that has things that are unique to yourself, to you. If you put those two things together, what you have is a great artist. If you look at any great artist in history, they have the ability to speak to the people, to express things that everybody understands, you know, human basic emotions, thoughts, feelings, that those things can be expressed to the audience, but they do it in a way which is their way, whether it's Tina Turner doing it or James Brown doing it or Robert Plant doing it or Tony Iommi doing it or Bob Marley doing it. You know, Bob Marley doesn't sit there worrying that Bob Marley is not Tony Iommi, right? Your individuality is your X factor. How do you bring that out? And that means you sitting back and going, right, if it's my job to express, what do I want to express? If you're expressing, the idea that you're not good enough just goes out the window, right? And this is borne out by all the artists in the world. You know, if you look at most megastar singers, right, the best singers on that stage are the ones sat behind doing backing vocals. They can technically sing anything, but they are not artists. They do the job, they do what they're told. The artist has a voice where you can recognize it instantly, right? Because that sells records. Okay? Think about it. Think about it. It's true of drummers, bass players, guitar players, saxophone players, the whole lot, especially in popular music or rock music or jazz or blues or whatever it is. You're selling your individuality, but your individuality is based upon your ability to express your individuality, right? But the second factor that I brought in, this idea that the competition is great, that can do your head in more than the first one. Why do I bother? I'm putting my music out there, only 4 people are listening to it. The competition is great. Now, if we were to take that big pool of musicians out there that are trying to get their stuff out there and failing, right? And we then took all the ones that were just trying to impress and just took them out of the picture, the ones who are trying to conform, the ones that are just trying to show off how competent they are, the ones who have sat there and just buffed their music to an absolute perfect, you know, representation of their godlike abilities that don't exist. If we take all that music out, what are we left with? We're left with the music that people want to listen to. If you want to beat the competition, you need to swap the idea of trying to impress to trying to express. Once you learn to express on your instruments, right, your practice regime or your songwriting regime will get better. The reason why all these musicians like John Coltrane and Art Tatum and John McLaughlin and, you know, Roy Marchbank, the guitarist I play with, who is one of the fastest guitarists in the world, they didn't get there by trying to play fast. They got there, I promise you, because they were trying to express something that required them to play fast. That's a big difference. There's nothing wrong with fast music. I love fast music. I love exciting, intense music, right? I want to hear that. I want to hear a blizzard of notes. I love it when Coltrane is just pummeling me, you know, with every scale in the world. You know, that's an incredible thing. But Coltrane didn't do it because he wanted to show off. Did he? You know that. Everyone who's watching this knows that Coltrane wasn't learning to play fast to show off. What he wanted to do was take sort of music that was in 3D and he wanted to bust it out harmonically and rhythmically so it was in 4D. He wanted to be able to express, 4 keys at the same time, or all the keys at the same time, or at certain points, no keys at the same time. He wanted to express newness. He wanted to go into an area that no one had been in before. Right? He wanted to express the unknown, right? This is what makes music great. And if you watch this video and it goes in, if you start to say, right, I want to express, so say you've only just picked up a guitar, stop trying to learn your favourite song, stop trying to play that scale as fast as you can, sit down and play something that would move somebody. That's a little test, something really simple. And when somebody comes around and says, "Oh, you've been playing the guitar?" "Yeah, what have you been doing?" "I've been doing these scales and I've got them quite fast." And you go, and they sat there going, "What is this? That's not music." But say you've worked out a very delicate, beautiful little guitar piece. It's only got 4 chords, but you've worked on the dynamics, you've worked on the arrangement, you've used all the musical tools there to express something beautiful. And you sit down and play. It might not be the hardest thing in the world, right? But it's something that people can listen to. "Oh, that sounds really, that's beautiful, that is." When you do that, as a musician, you have arrived. You are there. It doesn't matter about the technique. Right? When I started playing the guitar, I picked up a guitar and I pressed down some notes. And unbeknownst to me, I played an A major 7 open chord, and it was the most beautiful chord in the world, and I loved it and I thought it sounded pretty. I didn't want to play the guitar, but I couldn't help but pick that guitar up and listen to that sound. I wasn't learning the guitar, I was just making it make a sound, a pretty sound that I liked, and I wanted to hear it. That is what you need to do. That is expressing yourself. Sit down and play something that sounds good, right? Simple as that. The secret to making it in this industry, the secret of being a successful artist, the secret of making a ton of money and getting everybody to think you're the best thing since sliced bread. So when you walk down the road, everyone greets you like a friend and you can feel all confident, and it will override your awful self-loathing because the world likes you, right? If you want that, then learn how to do something good, something that expresses something to another human being. And if you make that the goal of your practice routine, if you make that the goal of your composition, if you make that the goal of the idea and image of the band, to express something that makes something feel something, right? And when you produce, when you record, ask yourself, is this recording making the person want to move, making them want to cry, making them want to laugh, right? And if you don't know that, and the problem is when it comes to recording, because it's a very difficult thing, musicians often don't. So we have producers, and producers are the people that sit back and go, "Oh, this is a record now. It's a record." Doesn't matter about the quality, doesn't matter if the bass drum's recorded right or everything's in time or out of time. No, that's not what counts. You've got to sit, it's got to sound like a record. Right, now I'm going to do a video about this, about making something sound like a record and the mechanics of that, because when you actually look at the music industry and the way they do it, it is completely unlike the way amateur musicians go about creating recordings, right? It's a totally different process. And if you understand that, you will get some success. Right, so I hope this little video I did today was the one I wanted to do, and I just thought I'm going to do it today. Let's go on. I've been meaning to do it for a long time. It's not a top 10. It's not got loads of stuff about, identity politics or postmodernism, all those things that, get people all irate so they watch the video and I can get the views. Let's see how well this video does, right? So those of you watching it, you can have a look at the views. If this has gone stratospheric, then the world's a better place than I thought, and it means that people really want to know how to make great music, which is what you want to be coming to this channel for. I'm not saying I know it, but the thing is, all those records behind me, I love them, they're incredible. And I've asked the question, I am just asking the question. I could also be completely wrong, and the best way to make it is to record your little music on your little Pro Tools setup and go through and get everything in time so it sounds like a demo. Okay, if you enjoyed this video, like it. If you want to see more, subscribe and ring the notification bell. And if you want to become a Patreon and support me, the link is down below. Thanks for watching this video, and I'll see you on the next one.